a rubber stamp, Parliament cannot stand against the executive. Parliament is in bed with the executive, and that's why a lot of things are not changing in the country. If Parliament was doing its job and fully checking the executive, unfortunately, remember, courts have ruled that the majority and minority is decided by the people at election. And at that time, just like in the case of America, you remember Joe Biden had minority in the Congress, and he was checked thoroughly. And similarly, that would have happened. It means then the president would have his way. But as things will be, independents and there's people from certain parties and others crossed over persuasion, and the government had majority. So the majority of their way and the minority of their say, and that doesn't help Kenya. All these debts, we have debts, we have unpaid petty bills to businessmen, most of them who had borrowed money, commercial loans from banks. They are depressed. They are not employing young people. We have a lot of companies which have left the country to invest in Rwanda, Tanzania, and other favorable countries where the tax regime is good. And we're losing because our Kenyan young people were working here. They go down in the industrial area, those who have done engineering, they'll get a salary, they'll get hope that one day things will be better. But now when these companies shut down, then you want graduates to go to Arabia and work as house helps. You have young people in Myanmar detained there. How did the government in the first place allow these people to go there? Who has registered these agencies? Who controls them? So we have people who arrive in Myanmar, you are hoping to have a future, and then you are told, first of all, you owe the ancient 1.3 million, 2 million, you need to work for it, then whatever it is slavery. That's not the Kenya we want. We want young people to create industries here, online, writing and all that which happens in the, with the new technologies. And a lot of people are working online for big companies, attending meetings, and even working in America for an American company while you are here in Kenya. We want agriculture to be realized. If it is sad, because we toured Senate, we toured Turkana. There is a lot of water there, rivers flowing, good land, but the irrigation which is being done there by the National Irrigation Authority is really ridiculous. In fact, there's very little input from the government. The people just use their own traditional technologies and grow food. Of course, there are the other conflicts because some people are rearing animals and others want to settle down. And these animals, when they come through these, farms, they just destroy the crop, and it brings a little bit of uncertainty. But we have a lot of water in the country. We have rivers, every other day flowing into the ocean. We should have tapped this. You see, we are buying a lot of new 4x4s in the treasury, in the judiciary, in parliament, in the executive. A president in West Africa is buying, tractors and making water available for people, and people are doing farming. If you see the wastage of our taxes in this country is out of place. I mean, some of the vehicles be replaced with these top-notch 4x4s, hardly 100,000 kilometers. And then they are left somewhere in government quarters. They gather dust. They look a little bit dirty. And then all of a sudden they are auctioned to government-connected people at a throwaway price, and the country loses. So I think our taxes are not being managed properly the way they should be. We have a lot of money in the country. If well utilized, a lot of it is looted. The Shah, she story. So then what happened to the NHIF? Who are the thieves of NHIF? Where is the money? The only good man in ESCC, the chairman, somebody brings a bill in the house to sack him. I mean, what are you telling Kenyans? That's a person Kenyans trust and is not likely to be compromised. And he seems, yes, he see, is practicing corruption at a very high level. That's why they make sure investigations are shoddy and they have loopholes. And obviously, somebody who's stolen a lot of money is going to get away in court because the courts apply the law. And then there's a lot of bribery allegations. You've seen some of the cases
Thank you.
in the court system, and
Thank you.
justice is for sale. And then
Thank
now
you.
you come to the executive, no serious planning, roadside declarations, and nothing getting done. University, structures, we go to court, abductions. You can imagine all these young people abducted, and the stories told by abducted young people. You remember even the case of Wajir MCA, 8 months, in custody, which is not known. I am, well, the police inspector general will get into trouble, but if the young people
We'll get to
are
that.
with the army, for example,
We'll get to that.
or other installations, Dibai, you want me to stop?
Yeah. Just hold on there so that we'll get to that. I think you've raised a couple of issues, conflicts of them, that
Yes.
we need to peg our thoughts on. So you can just hang on a bit on that, Dan Manzo, so that we can also hear from our other panelists. But you raise important questions, especially balancing development and physical discipline. Emerging questions will be how can also the government maybe strike a balance between maintaining the key government facilities and addressing urgent economic hardships is faced by ordinary citizens. Even in light of what we know right now with the state house innovation, people have been asking questions about transparency and accountability. How can the government ensure better accountability in major expenditures like the 7.81 billion shillings against billion shillings that was for the state house renovations to avoid wastage and also delays? Does it merit our priorities right now, where we know we have issues that also were highlighted here by Joshua Kipto that will merit our priority: education reforms, healthcare, the Haiti mission as well. We know the funding has been adversely affected. We have to plug in some huge billions of shillings, at around 12 billion shillings as we know it right now. So is the government losing a bit of its true north, and how can we bring it back to its true north? And even as we're talking about this, I wanted just to bring back the issues of Broadside Declaration, because right now it seems everyone is looking at that gesture that we had, the recent tour of Nairobi. People asking, some critics arguing that the president is campaigning too early while failing to deliver on his 2022 promises. And then maybe that is what we'll ask here. Would you agree? And how can Kenyans also respond to the national tours? Do they see them as genuine engagement or political theatrics? We've been here before in the guise maybe of political development, they will say, but now we've actually begun the political campaigns in earnest. I want to rope in Kabano just to also shed light on this as well, as we'll be talking about much later also the debt management. Kabano, good to see you finally. Kindly remember to unmute.
Yes, I've done that. And thank you very much for this invitation and the opportunity. I've had the other panelists very cogent issues raised there. I'd like to be very brief and just talk generally on the Broadside declarations, and of course how that connect with the rule of law. I know we have focused more on what is being done by the incumbent president and the regime. But broadly, we should reflect on what is happening everywhere, in schools, in churches. When you have church congregations, they are making their resolutions. How are the congregants involved in that? When you go to schools, in primary schools, in day schools, those high schools, those declarations made on employment, on budgets and all that. In our own ways in our private lives, in our public lives, in the community governance. Is it peculiar? I would want to submit that it is not. Is a systemic challenge that we need to deal with very systematically, so that we do bottom-up, publicly spirited change that can impact society. Now, what you are discussing today, by and large, is informed by the developments that happened last year, which was a watershed. The activities that were initiated across the country, defying boundaries of ethnicity and geopolitical locations by the young people. The young people are driving the change. And that's why you see almost every day I receive 5, sometimes even 20 forwards of text messages, emails, and WhatsApp about what is happening in Burkina Faso, the place of Thomas Sankara with the now Ibrahim Traore. You can see the inspiration. In the older days, we are receiving a lot of quotes about Nelson Mandela. You know, that sage, the icon of the anti-apartheid regime, the struggle against racism in South Africa. So now we are in another phase, a new era, where the focus is on radical change to Africanize the resources of our continent and democratize leadership, not only through the ballot. Because what is happening in Chad, in Mali, Burkina Faso, in Guinea-Bissau, it's not about elections that happened, like what happened in 1984 in South Africa. After Mandela was out and became the pioneer president. It's not about a celebration about 1982 multi-party democracy in Kenya, or 2002 transition from the 24-year Moi to a new rainbow regime. It is about, is it affecting the public? So the kind of things we are seeing are not just developmental politics. It's about a radical shift, about appropriating or putting the resources of the people, of the country, in the hands of the citizenry. So what we see every day is being celebrated globally, not just in Kenya, of Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, is the agricultural revolution that is reviving, that was stalled after Sankara left and he was eliminated. So I can say that only the ill-advised can now dare antagonize the very fact and reality that Gen Z's watershed is defining what is being done. Today, I've just seen the breaking news about the Anglican Church, deplatforming politicians from the archdioceses to the parishes to the churches. But people say it's a good move. We thank the head of the Anglican Church in Kenya for that, very timely. But is it supposed to be, are they shaking? No. Were they supposed to enjoy platform in the first place? No. Was it wrong to allow politicians to intoxicate their verbal attacks and assault on their opponents on the pulpit? It was wrong from the very beginning. So we can say what Gen Z started platforming, including what happened recently at the church in Roysambu, in Kasarani constituency, is what is now driving others to also respond. So we should be celebrating very much that we, the old days, if you look at the mainstream opposition, whether we talk about the Orange Democratic Party or even Manzo's party, the Wiper Democratic Party, they are enticing youngsters. If you go to the incumbent government, they're also enticing youngsters. The People's Loyal Opposition, led by Kalonzo and Matha and Rigathi Gachagua and Eugene Wamalwa, they are trying to entice the youngsters. Unlike in our time, when we actually walked, if I remember early days when we were just completing campus, we went around town looking for the Rairas, for the Kretos, for the Moites and other politicians, in order to talk to them, in order to engage them and see whether we could be either the appanage or a mainstream of their political parties. This time, it is the other way. The old days, the establishment, the octogenarians are stretching their arms, their hands in order to reach where the Gen Zs are. So even in the media, you see the bolder headlines. Like I've been watching keenly the Taifa Leo and the Standard Daily. You can see they are getting bolder and bolder by the day to keep up with a generation that has moved ahead, and we have now to do a catch up. So these headlines are now trying to echo youth radicalism in a positive way. You look at the president here. I have listened to all his speeches when he was in Nairobi. Those snipers, the forwards you receive on WhatsApp and sometimes online. He is trying to speak to young people about the jobs, about affordable housing, about the children on chapatis and everything. So these are becoming the talking point, because the status quo in Kenya, whether in government or opposition, whether it is we, the old days, the fathers to the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, we are vulnerable. Social media, online small radios, even investing to translate their messages in vernaculars have become the cornerstone of the conversation that we have. The issue of youth guided and youth driven and the youth dominated conversation is a time bomb for the next election, because it is swift, it is unexpected, and it is unpredictable. It can be a hurricane. So as we shape up to do conversations and engage on issues, let's remember that the accountability charter that the youth have been doing, interrogating budgets, is only going to enhance, so that we have conversations about counties. Very few counties. Somebody mentioned, I think, is Kipto mentioned about Isiolo, and they mentioned about Mandera, places that are very far off Nairobi, people that are considered the marginal areas. The people are rising spontaneously because they are responding. So the further focus that is expected on interrogating, asking heavy questions about county government, about the utilization of development funds, about those so-called benchmarking trips, about flagship projects, will become a very, very serious question. And this is going to develop more and create an anchor called issue-based leadership. Now, finally, as we even discuss all this, whether analytically or criticizing, the politics of development is good, but it is not superior to leadership integrity. That is clearly enshrined in Chapter 6 of our Constitution, which is enabled by an act of parliament that was done in, I think, 2002, Public Officers Ethics Act. So this brings us to that reflection. When we are saying we are deplatforming politicians, either in the church or elsewhere, or making roadside decrees as governors, as a president, as members of parliament, or even MCAs on the ground, we should remember that very minimum behavior, the political hygiene, the leadership sanity, it is actually an obligation, not a favor. So now what we are doing, whether we are in church, whether we are in parliament, whether in state house, whether in the county government, is that we are reacting. And this reaction is not entirely bad, because this shows that we have attached the nerve. So finally, I will say that it is right. But let us also remember, organizing is what changes circumstances. There is hope in Kenya. Today, just as I was heading home to come and join this space, I had a session just around the Dhaka town of entrepreneurship that is making innovations, and those innovations in that industry are focusing on making products from macadamia, from milk, from mangoes, from avocados, and the main focus and investment is about the multiplier effect, how to get the farmer on board, and how to reduce importations, including of perfumes, deodorants, soaps, and so on and so forth. And even the conversation about how come in the 21st century, in 2025, we are still importing toothpicks, and so on and so forth. So even as the situation is dire and people are very critical and very challenged, and unemployment, joblessness, and enterprises are facing a lot of serious economic challenges, and the pay slip is dwindling by the day. There is great hope and there is optimism when people organize, when people enterprise creatively, and when people invest in integrity, because that is what is going to platform the new growth when the opportunity for leadership transition happens, because it is inevitably going to happen, and the shocker, the time bomb, is just accumulating. Thank you.
Thank you, Kabando. But, when President William Ruto came to power, he came also on the basis, or his leadership was predicated on hope. Everyone was very hopeful that we are going to see a different kettle of fish when it comes to politics. It will be a politics, as you just mentioned, issue-based politics. And this is what was his main mantra. But also, we have a good book saying that hope deferred make the heart sick. And I want just to, it makes the heart sick. Do you think we in a place of sickness as a nation as it is? Because even when, and I want just you to mention this, then we have also Oliver Waindi, who is also on the line, just to respond as well. The question we're asking, is the center speaking to the periphery, right? That connection that we saw, the goodwill that the president had prior to 2022, has he lost it? And people now are not looking at him in the same lenses that they did earlier back, very hopeful. Are they hopeless? Briefly.
Look at what happened in the year 2002. Kenya was out of a global survey. Kenya was rated number 1 most optimistic country in the world, despite the fact that our economy was growing at -4%. We were rated optimistic because we are a resilient community. We are able to shift. As you have seen, people can shift very quickly. Like in 2024, when the revolution initiated and dominated and guided by Gen Z happened, you would go to the most interior part of this country, in the most forlorn, the most isolated hamlet in Kilifi or in Mandera, and you'd hear all the people who only have access to maybe a vernacular radio or a news by way of word of mouth. They were all celebrating these young people. I recently wrote about an 82-year-old that I met and had only the issues to tell me how we should go back to our traditional food, how we should be very good fathers. He was talking to us. We are on a table, men only, and this pioneer nurse in Kenya came over to our table talk. And the third issue, and she came and disrupted us, was about why are we killing our youth? Why are we abducting our youth? We should give them an opportunity. We should give them space, and we should recognize the charter they are put on the table. So in 2022, William Ruto got a lot of traction. And I remember there's a day I spoke about it in a mainstream station, and it was very controversial, that, he was resonating everywhere. The message was going. But remember, that message was from the campaign of William Ruto, the Hustler Nation, then the so-called Kenya Kwanza. That was a message crafted and driven and appropriated by a political campaign for the presidency. When the narrative is universally shared, and now issues, as we said, of equity and equality and ethics, leadership integrity, the charter of accountability, is not dominated by a certain Alif who became the Minister for Labor, the one who passed in the accident in a Busia as a minister. So I want to say that the ideas that are spreading have percolated so deep, and our worry. I'm a politician and I've been political for many years, but I'm worried that even in conversation with my children and with their age mates, I find that we are making very serious assumptions about how the Railas and the Rutos of this world, the Urus of this world, even the Kalonzos and the Gades and the Karuas of this world, and ourselves included. Of course, I'm including every one of the political system that has been, those who have been. We are making assumptions that we are going to dominate. In fact, let me conclude by saying, getting the right presidential candidate, if there comes a man, a woman, old or young, who, whether now, midstream, or at the rear end of the next election, we don't know when it's going to happen, because things can happen that are not expected. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen on this space, that gravitas of somebody who can unchain the young people may bring so much of a hurricane that we will be left standing, seeking to be accommodated in a movement that we will not dominate. This is likely to happen. So yes, big wigs, we respect the young, the senior people, the mainstream, opposition parties, and even those who are in the cabinet. We recognize their dominance and their influence, but the test is going to come. Let's have just an IBC. Let's young people register. You can see, I had an Atebea the other week during the burial of Chairman Chebukati. He talked about the removal of the fees for acquiring IDs. And 3 days ago, I had the president now agreeing, although they could not admit in Trans Nzoia. All I'm saying, a voice that is resonating correctly with young people must be obliged to, has to be obeyed, because no one can dare today antagonize. They could speak in the parliament last year when parliament was actually impeached on the 25th of June. But as we speak today, only a fool, and I dare say, only a fool will voice something negative to young people. They have great power, and that power is going to be executed on the ballot in a way not seen, perhaps, since independence. We wish them well.
Thank you.
And we support them and we love them.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh my.
Yeah, thank you,
Wow.
Kabando, for those sentiments. And of course, even when we're talking about IDs and the declaration of sometimes that the voting or the vetting, I should say, will not be as rigorous as it were from the boundaries point of view, especially in the Northern Rift. That is one of the items that we are talking about as a broadside declaration. And I want us to hear from Oliver Waindi, I know also you've been listening keenly on the ground on what the young people are saying. And I want you just to chime in light of what has been highlighted here by Kabando, Professor Daniel Changi as well. I can see also Professor Peter Kagwanja is joining us. And Daniel Manzo, what is your perspective? Oliver, over to you.
Well, I completely resonate with what Kabando just said. I think we've taken our young people for granted for a long time. And to me, the biggest problem that we have in this country is the assumption that the solutions of this country lies with the likes of Raila, Ruto, Uhuru, Rigathi. You know, one of my panelists, one of my fellow participants this evening has said that we don't have shortage of good people in this country. And I don't buy into the idea that our solutions must come from Raila and Ruto, or Raila and any other president like it's been, or any other current politician. I think we've tried them, they've failed us. We are going into a bad path. And like Daniel Manzo has said, it's high time we brought our country back to normalcy. That will involve, of course, a great deal of respecting the will of the young people. Like Kabanda said, I think democracy is overrated. It's just punctuated with elections that come every 5 years. But really, we want more than that, because we've had that, and the quality of our lives is just going worse and worse and worse and worse. I'm not saying that we would go the Burkina Faso way, but we must get a way that our young people, and especially the population in general, must get their basics going on for them. We can't have a country where it's impossible to go to the hospital, it's impossible to go to school. University students cannot afford even food, leave alone fees. And, we just think it's normal. So I really desire to see a situation where we will play less politics and really involve more of our young people to take over leadership in this country. I'm not saying that they have to participate in possibly getting elected themselves, but we want to see the 8 million people who didn't vote, or 8 million who didn't even bother to turn up and get voters card. We want to see them up in 2027, so that we have got a much more realistic elections. We got more young people participating. But even that notwithstanding, I don't think you need election to really do the right things, because when we are seeing the kind of largesse that we're seeing in this country and the mismanagement that we're seeing in this country, it doesn't need young people. You don't need a young person right now to know that our mothers are dying because they can't afford to go to the hospital while giving birth. You don't need elections, or you don't even need young people to note that our children are not sure whether they're in primary school or in secondary school because of the transition we have in the CBC. You don't need election or young people to tell you that we cannot have a country of $300 billion, and yet almost 70% of us are living below the poverty line. So there are things that I think just require common sense, because the more this situation persists, the more I think we are provoking the country to anarchy. And what you saw on Thika Road and now on Jogo Road again yesterday are not isolated. These are things that are going to happen much more going to 2027, because people are just giving up in life. And when people give up in life because they don't have hope, then you see that level of anarchy. And that's what we need to arrest right now by doing the right things. And so those in leadership, and like just Manzo said, when you have got an important parliament, that is really the biggest challenge in our country right now. Let's bring our parliament back to its senses, where it used to be, having some semblance of independence, and therefore it could hold people accountable, not what we're seeing right now. And when Nyakango and Nancy are holding people accountable, then they're threatened by the likes of Ichungwa. We don't want that. We want a country where people really respect the rule of law, people respect accountability, and people accept that this country has got 56 million people. It's not just the few who drive the eights around our streets. And we have to respect those 56 million people. Otherwise, it will be too late. It's happened elsewhere. You've seen it in Syria. You've seen it in Burkina Faso. You saw it in Gabon. You saw it in Chad, in Niger. We are not immune to what's going on around the world. And so it's important that we are sensitive to what's going on. But as it is right now, our role as in my sector is to try as much as possible to entice young people to participate in the electoral process in the 2027 election, so that they participate either as participants themselves to be elected, but more importantly, as voters to cast their votes. Thank you.
And of course, yes, Benji.
Allow me to just second what Waindi is saying, because my battery, I'm on the road still. I've just pulled over to participate in this space, and I just want to second what Waindi is saying. There was a video trending yesterday all around the country of a guy that climbed a very high electricity pole. And from my calculations of how he chose the particular electricity pole, because it wasn't a regular pole, it was a pole carrying a lot of current. And then he electrocuted himself and killed himself. Suffice to say, to me, it seemed like that was probably a TVET engineer, probably a graduate, somebody who understands things, and the kind of hopelessness that young people are feeling. You go to school, you get education, you get knowledge, you get papers, you're tamarking for so long, you have a family. Perhaps the wife is telling him, wewe ni mwanaume una pesa, etc. This issue for a country such as this that has so much potential, I must commend Wendy and the rest for saying that we have to take a different path to ensure inclusivity. Inclusivity is not just tribes, it is ensuring that the young people and all Kenyans really feel they have a chance, an opportunity so that they can participate and earn something and make something of their own lives. That is the truth and that is the reality. All other political games notwithstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Benji. Well, unfortunate there for the young men. And of course, we've been seeing this rise of people dying by suicide, doctors. Well, yeah, there was also a young doctor who could not really get employment, and he also went that particular route. It's a niggling worry for us as well as a country where we are. And that's why we have these conversations as well. Professor Daniel Ichange, I just want you to chime in as well to what is happening currently. And in light of what has been raised also by Kabando and Oliver Waindi, as it is, how do we move the needle a jot higher to where we design this country to be?
Well,
especially when it comes to corporate governance, which I know you are a guru there for the longest time. Yes.
as I told you earlier, by the way, I am very, very excited with what is being said by everybody from Joshua to Kabando, who I listened to. I wish he would become as aggressive as he was earlier, although I'm still a little older than him. I must say that we desire a country that delivers for everybody. Right now, the organization of this state and the organization of this country, the systems in place, are rewarding the political class. They're the ones who can afford to stay in luxury dwellings in certain leafy suburbs of our towns. They're the ones who are able to take their children to school abroad. They're the ones who are getting their children all the plum jobs when the civil servants are not able to rise beyond a certain point because they do not belong to these classes. And they are the ones who are paid. It's very, very tragic right now. I can tell you colleagues of ours in, for example, Technical University of Kenya or Egerton, who have not been paid for months. People with PhDs who are teaching, who are working, are not being paid. Or you have situations where people are trying to bottle fresh water and they are going out of business because the taxes and the regimes that are in place make it completely impossible to make any money in this area of just bottling clean, fresh water for people to drink. I think to move this country forward, we must agree with the second part of the title of this program that we must go and run this country according to the law. There's no two ways about it. And I'm sorry that whereas a small man may be put into a police station for breaking the law, the people who are in positions of power are breaking laws every single day without any consequence. This is the height of impunity. And I must say that our constitution is very clear about what we need to do to bring this country back to ourselves. Now, Joshua did say that the current regime, headed by His Excellency President William Ruto, is suffering the consequences of a mismanaged economy. I was a bit amused by that statement because the last I checked, in that previous regime that Joshua was referring to, our current president was still the deputy president. So if there was any mismanagement of the economy, surely he must bear some responsibility, unless we can be told that there is another way of working where the second in command has no influence in running the nation. So, what do we do to move this country forward? I think the answer is right there. We must resolve and agree that we must run this country according to the rule of law, and we must hold, especially the political class, to account for their actions. I don't see any other way. What these Gen Zs are going to do, and by the way, they are not alone anymore. Their parents are supporting them, their brothers are supporting them, their uncles are with them. I think we are in a very dangerous position unless we change. And I told you we read the book. Go and read the good book, Second Timothy, chapter 3, the first 4 5 verses, and see that it describes exactly the kind of society that we have today. People who are lovers of themselves, lovers of money, people who are boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful and holy, without unforgiving, and it goes on, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash. Doesn't the good book describe what we see in this society? So let us agree, let us resolve. The president is in place. We are not, he's not, 2027 is still a long way off. Is he listening to his people? The deputy president is there. One Professor Kidiki. Are they listening to their people? They still have time to correct this. But they must run this country according to the law. On this Shashi issue, by the way, we were never told by the previous CEO of NHIF was suspended. He's a man of integrity. What did he refuse to do so that he is suspended? We were moving along. We were being told this is going to work. In the middle, you remove the acting CEO of NHIF and then you give a Shashi, which is giving everybody a big problem. What happened there? Did he do something? Did he refuse to do something that was not right? And it goes on and on in every sector, the education sector. We are worried about even the security sector now, because without security, this country cannot stand. No country can. So which way forward? Run this country according to the rule of law and start with the presidency. I would beg that the presidency, instead of just doing these tours around the city, must hold the government, the public, the executive, and everybody else to account. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Really do appreciate your sentiments. Professor Kagwanja, I can see you are mute. You actually sent a request for you to get the mic. In the meantime, I want to hear from Joshua Kipto, just in light of what also Professor Ichangi is really saying, the rule of law. And we know one man that also has been, and he's indicated, of course, the fidelity to the law is one, the emeritus Justice, Chief Justice Maraga. And we've had hints from him, albeit very subtle, that he could be running for presidency. And there are people saying, oh, now we have a man who is a stalwart of integrity and nobility of character. I want just to pose that question because I think also this might really dramatically change the entire shift of our politics when it comes to that. And are the young, could that be also another big threat? Yeah, are there new or emerging political figures who could disrupt the expected Ruto versus the opposition battle, as it were, even with the broad-based government and the Raila being in right now, with the emergence of Emeritus Chief Justice Maraga change things discernibly for our political landscape? What is your assessment?
Thank you very much, Dibal. The first question you've raised was on the issue of the rule of law. The 2024 Gen Z protest had governance firmly at the center of the agenda, where you have a nation that is yearning for governance be done in the expected way as per the constitution. For a long time, we kept talking about the new constitution, but it's no longer a new constitution per se. So you have a case whereby the expectation of the public is specifically on the issue of the rule of law on the basis that we want things done. Manzo said something important, which I think is what bedevils our country. He's talked about them as a Senate committee going to visit Turkana, and the findings they got kind of disappointed them when it comes to implementation of government programs vis-a-vis the issue of irrigation. But that is the main thing that has been the story of Kenya for a long time, whereby we don't get value for money when it comes to public resource, and that goes straight to the issue of governance and the rule of law. If there's one thing the president can get as a low-hanging fruit is being hard on enforcement of the law as expected as per the law. That is what is still missing in our country. And that's why I feel the protest of 2024 was all about that. People are saying we need to get value for money. Number two, we have to apply the law as is. One of our biggest undoing as a nation as we speak right now is that we don't have we can't say we are doing well on matters enforcement of the law. We are not doing well on matters applying the law as is or as expected. If you look at the issues that have affected us, it all boils down to implementation. And we are speaking from a lawyer point of view. It's no longer a question of crafting and writing new laws. I'm happy the clamor is no longer about reforms. We need to reform this. We need to write new law. That is what under the bridge. The issue is who can implement the law. And the president has to take up that challenge, and there's no two way about that. The time is here. And that's why you find the clamor and demand of the populace is on the issue of why shouldn't we apply the law as is expected from the basics in terms of government programs, government projects. We get it wrong because we don't strictly follow what the law and the governance aspect expects of us, especially if you're in government or if you're holding a position of power. That said and done, for 27, the entry of Maraga, he's known mostly from that perspective of being a stickler to the rule of law, in the sense that if you remember his famous saying as he was nullifying the 27 elections, he spoke about a country that adheres to the fidelity of the law, the constitution. That is his brand. My only concern is as to whether that can translate to a change of the dynamics. A wait and see. This is my assessment. You have the political class already in gear. The president is already in campaign mode. He is ready for the battle of 27. Like you can see the political class is prepared. It boils down to organization. Winning an election is about organizations. Beyond the ideology, beyond the philosophy, there is the organizational bit. So the political class as is now is already geared towards that. They are already full steam. By the time you see the president and Raila coming together, it's basically around 27. The question of the story is around 27. The opposition now led by the different players from the former deputy president, Rigathi, Kalonzo, Martha Karua, all of them, they are already in that space. And that's why they're talking about new formations. You saw Rigathi talking about a new party. You have Wiper Manzo is here saying they are seeking to rebrand. You find them trying to bring in the young voices that were visible during the protest. I saw them trying to co-opt the young man from Kisii, Morara Kebaso. Why would they do that? Because the political class already is, it is instinctive. They know that the 27 contest is already set. It will be a referendum on the President Ruto's first term as a president, and them they're already set. Now the unknown bit is on this other clamor by the younger generation who only lack one thing. They are very good in mobilization, very good in agreeing on issues, very good in framing and getting people to understand what issues are. Did you see the creativity that came around the protest of 24, whereby the finance bill would be translated into local languages so that when people are saying, how did, for example, as Kabando is asking, how comes a remote village in Kilifi was able to pick this kind of issues and talk about we need not to arrest people? It is because of the fact that the young people went out of their way to do something different. Now, all those good things they have done, but they lack one thing: organization into a political outfit, or organization around a political outfit, or organization around a political individual to support. Because the mantra around Gen Z protest was, we are leaderless. And that was a way of keeping the organic nature of the movement. That was good. But there's a limit. When you head towards an election, that is a targeted objective. That's a targeted exercise. Only the organized get it right. You can be good, you can be popular, but if you're not organized, then you lose it, because the election is a marathon, it's a process. How you plan it out to the end game, it makes sense. I would expect the organization bit that is lacking for the mass young people. You don't find a single voice or a collection of voices that can mobilize or can organize people around specific items. Like, for example, at the moment, the main thing that the young people should be doing is taking IDs like no one's business. Taking IDs, registering as a voter. Taking IDs, registering as a voter. Once IBC is constituted, then its whole system go about registering new voters. That is missing because this aspect of leaderless is hampering. So I find that the entry of Maraga is basically, among other players, there was Okio Mtata, even Morara Kebaso coming up at some point saying that I want to run for president, is basically feeling that there's a vacuum, there's a space. So Maraga, yes, is just one among others that are coming to the table to try tap into this new voice, this clamor for governance and rule of law. My only concern is, I hope he doesn't suffer the ignominy that Mukisa Kitui suffered in 2022, whereby you have this brilliant, nice individual with good CV, good history, unknown entity, but when it comes now at the ultimate point of converting it into a political juggernaut, something sellable, something of a movement that people can identify and a brand, I hope that David Maraga, as well as the team around him, have figured out that bit. Same has happened before. 2013, Peter Kenneth was the new kid on the block, freshness. He had done a fantastic job as Gatanga MP, and he came with this newness, saying to nice make and all that. He came with Ronnie Osumba, again, didn't get traction because the messaging and everything was right, but it didn't translate to a political organizational juggernaut that can sell and brand and make something out of it. In 2017, you had Ekuro Okota and the Third Way Alliance. Again, it didn't happen. 2022, you not much because the coalitions were bigger and more accommodative. I think for 22, it was a blowback from 17, whereby it was realized that the third party or the fringe candidates don't make an argument. So 22 being a succession politics, everyone amalgamated themselves around two formations. So it was a simple game of Kenya Kwanza versus Azimio. 27, then Maraga may offer that, but I'm not certain as to how, or I cannot judge them at this early point. I'll be keen to give them time to see how exactly have they figured out of transitioning from good name, good history, good philosophy, good ideas, and tap into the discontent around the country, around the rule of law and governance. How do they make the two merger and come up with a political formation that can sell? For me, that is the point. However, lastly, as I speak on that, when it comes to the rule of law, politics is about who wins and then how do they apply the rule of law. William Ruto came in on a strong foundation of, he said, never again would we have extrajudicial killings and the rest, and it was resonating well with people. The reason why you see so much criticism against the government on abductions is because it is on the basis of what was promised in 22. And I'm happy if you look at the situation at the moment, that seems to have been brought to a close thanks to the clamor of the people. I don't know if ODM will take credit where they say that they are the ones who came in and said no more abduction. Anyone is taking credit for whatever, but credit mostly goes to the people for insisting. And it became a national agenda that the president had to address it across board. Everywhere he went, he was being asked, why are our young people being abducted? And as you've seen, there's a change of tide. The last 2 months, even those that had been arrested for a long time are being released. So that tells you it all boils down to the person. Once you promise, I'm sure this time the voters will be more keen to see through you. There's keenness that is happening now that you can't just show up and speak about rule of law. People will start first asking for your credentials. Show us where you fought for the rule of law. That thing is coming up very fast. That's why you've seen For example, Rigathi Gachagua will struggle with that. How will he justify his stay in government for 2 years when all these atrocities happen up to this last minute? I think one of the speakers here mentioned the same thing. He said, when I mentioned about a mismanaged economy, the president then was the deputy president. You could see it still followed him. And some people would say you are part of it. So that will still count. So that whoever will come with the agenda of the rule of law, there will be a proper background checkup. You remember for Okia Omtata, there was a time there was controversy around Kibet Bull being arrested after meeting him. And the conspiracy theory that now ran, whether it was true or not, ran out, especially on this platform, was that could he be a double agent that Okia Omtata was setting up for the arrest? And he had to come out, issue statements, speak, and says he's even the one clamoring for the release of this person. Why? Because you have a voter who is very sensitive on credential. They just don't take what you tell them on a sunroof. They want to see through and say, are you this person? So Maraga may benefit from that. But as to how we can convert it into something, for me, it's a different thing. Lastly, remember our politics are dynamics, but there's a consistent trend that is happening. Look at our elections since 2007. I think 202. 202 is the first time you started seeing serious coalition building. So that in 202, the only way we kicked out Moi was through an opposition alliance that was a coalition of everyone, all strange bedfellows. The Rainbow Alliance from KANU and the opposition then under NAK came together. Subsequent elections after that has always been around coalitions. In 2007, Kibaki amalgamated all the smaller parties under the PNU. ODM came up with the famous Pentagon that was basically picking regional kingpins. Then in 2012, you had Uhuru Ruto, which was more or less like a merge of two parties. On the other side, CORD was a merge of three parties. 2017, a further improvement of the coalition game by having now NASA being an expanded CORD with more entrants in the name of Isaac Ruto and Mudavadi. But on the side of Jubilee, it was still the same party because they were the government of the day. But remember, they amalgamated all the parties under them, 8 or 12 of them, into one big coalition then called Jubilee Coalition. 22 was a classical case of how we've evolved politically into coalitions, because 22, the reason why we didn't talk about fringe candidates is basically we had two big coalitions. A classical American system where you have the Democrats versus Republicans. Now, in our case, it was Azimio versus KK. I don't think there'll be a reset going back. By the time you see the president quickly making move to sign up Raila Odinga so that they have UDA or DM, the two biggest parties at the moment, it is with an eye to 27. 27 will be a question of coalitions. My only question would be, if it is a question of the rule of law, will the Maragas and the Okiya Omtatas be willing to be part of a bigger coalition that may not have people who can be said stand for rule of law? Will they be in a comfortable position, for example, Rigathi Gachagua, who some of the voters may say, are you sure he speaks our language of rule of law? So for me, going to 27, it will be a classical case of coalition politics that you may even see a runoff. We are getting closer and closer to a runoff election. 27 may be the first. Look at the margins. From 2013, 2017, 22, we've come from a margin of 800,000, 400,000. 2022, the difference between number one and number two was 200,000. Which means we are knocking on the door for runoffs. And runoffs only happen when you have coalition. So it's a coalition of willing. And 27, as we have agreed here, it will be about agendas. So the ruling regime will be focusing on the agendas of what they have achieved. If they would have turned a tide on the economy, if they would have done well on issues to do with healthcare, now the shisha, if they would have done well on matters to do education, university funding model, CBC is now rearing its ugly head now again. When the issue of maths being not made compulsory, all of a sudden CBC is now under the microscope. So these are the agendas that Kenya Kwanza will die at the altar of the 27 election. They will make their fight, die or survive on this altar. But on the part of the other coalition, would we have all these voices willing to amalgamate around the agendas that resonate well, for example, by the young people? Would the young people accept a coalition of willing and unwilling, where you have people who previously not stood for rule of law, but are leading lights, but you have also those with credentials? So will we have such a case, and will the voter accept that coalition of a willing and unwilling to a point of now creating a political juggernaut? All that is up in air. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think also the biggest impediment and the tripping wire for the young people is the fact that also the Political Parties Act does not really allow a formation of, a political party of the young people. We need the face of Kenya. We need inclusivity. So every person is represented there. That will be also another big challenge. So you have to, because now it's coalition. You cannot really go as a maverick. You need to join forces. That will be also one of the things that we'll be keeping our eyes peeled to see how also that will form as well. I want us to rope in Peter Kagwanja briefly, then we shall hear from Daniel Manzo, especially when it comes to the coalitions and overwilling, because right now it seems the way you make it, if you make the smart move, then at the end of the day, you might really also clinch that particular seat. So it's going to be also, as you've mentioned, a neck-to-neck politics where I don't know if could be a possibility. Professor Peter Kagwanja, over to you. If you can, I know you were on the road. Briefly, you kindly unmute if you're speaking. Professor Peter Kagwanja. Right, he was on the road, so as soon as is so that we can also save on time. I can see we are pinched for time, and we want also to open the mic to the plenary so that at least we can. I can see a lot of requests for people to ask questions, so that we'll give also a handy opportunity to them to say something. Let me hear from Daniel Maz, the formation, just briefly, as it is. And we know Raila Odinga was the biggest part of you, and now he's out. As a MIU, as it stands, I don't know, your party is trying to also rebrand. Are you going to do a rebranding? And
yes, eventually we will
yes.
rebrand. We'll eventually rebrand, but more important, we are working with a number of political parties. As you know, the Honorable Mother Karua recently rebranded. The Honorable Gachagua is working out on a political party. As an expert in this area, I don't think the government
as he approached Wiper Party.
I'm just saying, well, we are working with him already. He's working on a political party. He's preparing one. I would say, right now it's difficult to form a political party the way it's structured under the registrar of, political parties. But there are many, parties one can work with. The DP of the Honorable currently be chaired by Muturi, or associated with the former speaker, the former Attorney General, is a party which is popularly known in the country and has been there for a while. And there are quite a number of many other parties can come together, like-minded people or political parties, with similar goals. The most important thing now is the country needs change urgently. We need to get the country back to track, and a lot of Kenyans are very frustrated right now. The young and the young Kenyans are very brilliant. They are, if you attend a function with the young people and listen to the reasoning, you find the 20-year-old really has understood what should be done to change the country. And therefore, I do agree, although the law says, for you to become president, you must be 35 and above, that Kenyans will shock politicians in 2027. Kenyans will shock politicians, and especially the young Kenyans, just like the way you saw with the demonstrations. And they'll go there, they'll get shot, they'll get sprayed with poisonous water.
Allow me just to determination. Allow me just to butt in and ask you a pointed question. Even as you're talking about young people. First of all, I don't want us to miss. It will be remiss of me not really talk about also what the chair of Royal Media was saying, SK Macharia, regarding what has been happening with our voter registration. And he had raised concern about the voter registration. The veracity of it, I do not know. But I think this is something that's come to the public domain.
Yes, I want to agree with SK Macharia.
Let me just finish my question, because I wanted just to ask you, if we were talking about the young Gen Z, we mobilize them to get their voters, their IDs and their voter registration, and still the credibility of our voter registration is not really ironed out. You don't even have an IBC that will successfully carry this registration right now. We are really pinched for time. How do we know that this will actually, at the end of the day, affect the outcome of 2027? Just briefly, and you as legislators, why aren't you putting tails to make sure that we have a proper voter registration? I know we have challenges with the commissioners, but we can see things are shaking into place currently. Briefly, very briefly, then we shall hear from
the IBC is very important right now. We form IBC which Kenyans can trust, and I believe from the interviews so far and what is happening is there is a likelihood that we can get IBC which is well balanced. But most important is you know, elections have always been stolen, and I'm one of the lawyers who have done election petitions. I'll tell you what happened.
Mazo, I have a correction.
Yes.
Sorry if I, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Jose Inea Dibal. I want to correct you, sir.
Sure.
For you to you have just said that you need to be that there is a law that says for you to be a president you need to be 35 years of age. In fact, the correct position is that if you qualify to be a voter, you qualify to be a member of a county assembly, you qualify to be a member of the National Assembly, a member of the Senate, a governor of a county, and a president of the Republic of Kenya. You just need to have the minimum voting age, which is 18. There is no law says that you have to be that 5 years. And this law that was introduced in the mid-60s was meant to bar the brilliant genius Tom Mboya from succeeding Jomo Kenyatta as a president. Tom Mboya, who was ahead of his time, just like Martin Luther King.
I take in, and SK Macharia alleges that election is manipulated, and I wanted to give you an example. When the late Joe Nyaga was alive, we checked. We had just before the elections arrested his mother, and therefore we checked whether she had voted, and sure enough, she had raised from the grave and voted. And went back, and we have so many, votes like that. The voter register must be cleaned up. I believe the newly formed IBC must do a job which Kenyans can oversight, and there are many organizations, willing to make sure that there is clean election. But what I'm encouraging Kenyans, one thing which cures stealing of an election is people overwhelmingly voting, like 202. If everybody comes out to vote and vote, a person of integrity to lead the nation out of the people who will be, on the presidential ballot, I believe Kenyans can really make sure that no one can see the election. The votes are overwhelmingly done so that whoever is stealing finds it so difficult to manipulate the register or to get, deceased voters or people who didn't show up to vote, but they find that although they never voted, they are crossed out in the register and the ballot was cast on their behalf. That happens a lot more, and we really must sensitize Kenyans because there's every likelihood that can happen. What happens is in some of the far polling stations, people collude, the people doing the polling, the clerks and the IBC and the security. And at 5, when no one is showing up, that's the time now this voting takes place. I believe we can forestall that possible stealing of election by Kenyans coming out in large numbers and making sure you vote and you hang around till it is counted I know there are quite a number of, laws be proposed to Parliament
But
to water
Joshua
down
Joshua Kipto has given that.
the effects. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry to butt in. Joshua Kipto has indicated there could be a runoff, right? So where is a likelihood, of there could be a runoff?
A runoff is a possibility, but Kenyans are aware that if you have a runoff, you know how expensive it is. So there's a possibility of a runoff, but immediately a runoff situation is created. It means number one and number two will compete, and now Kenyans will know who to remove in that particular runoff. If you look at my prediction is that it's every likelihood that Baba will be on the ballot, Kalonzo will be on the ballot, and Ruto will be on the ballot. In that scenario, you expect Ruto to be number three. There'll be a runoff between Kalonzo and Raila. I'm just giving as an example. So in case of a runoff situation, Kenyans will know out of those two, the top two, who do they work with to make sure that the country is served better in the future.
Thank you. I know we start for time as well. It's going to 10 o'clock, and I want us just to maybe just take some few questions from the plenary. I could see initially there were a lot of requests, and I think I kept them hanging for a while. But it would be nice to hear also some of the Gen Zs who are here. They want to ask questions, and you want to contribute. Kindly also make it very brief so that we may save on time. We don't have to keep you for long here. This is a very important conversation, and I always say that democracy begins in conversation. So I want to just hand over the mic to Flavia. Flavia, I want to yield the floor to you. Nasambu, you have a question or a contribution you want to share? Kindly take the floor and make it very brief.
Thank you so much, Ainea. I am happy to be here. I get to have the voice of the older generation, and I feel like it's a ground to learn so much. I wish to bring in also a bit of the voice of comparatively younger generation. I have been able to join the different platforms, and most of the platforms in X are joined by people aged between 18 to, let's say, 45. And here is the character, and that will get me to my conclusion. One, people between 18 and 23 are characterized by the struggle of payment of fees. And that is shown by the new financing model that has been developed by the government. So there is discontent in regards to that for that generation. And then from 23 to, let's say, maybe 40, these are people who've gone through the system right. They went to school. I think they performed well in the academics, but then when they stepped out, there is no room for formal employment years on. And then still the same generation, they have passed through elections. And in those elections, they've been able to see people not serving over the years. And then they've been able to see people coming from their respective tribes, coming up as kinsmen and saying, we're representing your interest. But then they're the same people who remain unemployed. And then through the years also, they've been able to see that the rule of law is not working at all. If anything goes wrong in my life right now, if I am to go to the police station, it's me choosing to go to the jungle, because I know no form of any arm of the government will make the wrong done right. So I will just be using them kukufinya hawa to kando kando in the wrong way, but not to expect any form of justice. So what is the impact of that in the current population? One, trust has been lost in the different arms of the government. We don't believe the politicians. We do not believe the executive, the judiciary. is representing my interest, because we realize the moment there is I might as well focus on me. And in regards to the roadside declaration, the question that has come up significantly right now is, these people are doing nothing every single day. The promises they made in 2020, none of them has come to fruition. And then in addition to that, what is it costing? Public funds. How much money is used in terms of per diem for people to travel to Western Kenya to launch, I don't know which projects? And then in addition to that, how much money is being spent to hire tents and fuel vehicles for the people to travel there? And finally, recently, and most importantly, it's now even costing life. Those public roadside declarations mean nothing other than losing an opportunity to take work, but you come out here, you bring up a public, we are all of sound mind, majority of us are of sound mind, and we have seen through the years you doing nothing but now other than your chest stamping. So as of now, that is just an eyesore to many people. So we are not interested in all that. And then a bit just to contribute on coalition, Gen Z and the younger generation right now is teething. I agree on that. We have never been here. Most of the millennials, we lived through the era of Kibaki. So for the first few years, I think it was a season of comfort and not a struggle. So there was no much struggle in terms of political fight developed in us. And also, additionally, for the younger generation, also, we've never known, I mean, for the Gen Z, they've never known what it is to fight and how to fight. So we try and then we realize, oh, it's not, maybe we get a bit scared based on what they're doing to us, and then we retreat. But I can say I have seen people now becoming a bit more stronger as the days go by. And we are meeting people who are willing to mentor us without self-interest. Or maybe they do, but clearly it does not come out as of now. And we see a generation that is willing to mentor us and hold our hands and tell us, we walked this path before, and this is how you're going to do it. And we will advise you that you can do this and that and that and that. And also by ourselves, people are now having physical forums and sittings and taking it beyond X and talking and doing things and proposing policies. And there's more of an action right now. I feel like it's not clear because it's still at the teething stage, but I see that it's going to grow. And for coalition, I think the only receptive coalition for the younger generation is one, those who are providing mentorship, and two, those who have a meeting of minds and those who have a meeting of character, because clearly and factually things have to change and it cannot continue being the same. I learned at that.
Thank you, Flavian, for those very seminal remarks that you've raised regarding also how the center is not really speaking to the periphery, how they're really coming up with broadside declarations that you don't think in any way it's resonating with what the youth are doing currently. And the voice of the young people, the demographic dividend that we have in this country is not something that we cannot, of course, overlook. And just as you say, they're trying to grope in the darkness to find their voice. Intimidation will not put them down. You're having forums, and that is a good salutary effort that we are hearing from you as well. I want to also invite Ndegwa. Ndegwa, I can still join us. Thank you. Yeah, you have a comment or a contribution, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for everybody who has been contributing in these processes. May I begin by apologizing for coming in late, but I've been listening, and also say that Kenya finds itself in a unique situation where confirm to us that he has no regard for it. He does not know the constitution. He does not even understand it. Perhaps even to blame Mr. William Ruto for his character. Recently, we have seen blatant breach of the constitution, whereby even the president himself is accompanied by goons in his political trails. It tells you that the country has gone to the dogs. And until we get this country back to the path of the rule of law, hadi wakati ule tutakaporudisha hii nchi katika mfumo wa sheria na mfumo wa katiba, this country will not begin to heal. I have been able to diagnose the problem with Mr. William Ruto. The problem with Mr. William Ruto is that he does not understand our constitution. He has never read our constitution. And unfortunately, he was sworn in to defend a constitution that he has never read and he does not understand. If he understands the constitution, he would understand that these roadside declarations were a long time outlawed. They were a long time codified in our constitution, that the nation and the person at the helm will always speak within the confinement of the law. If Mr. William Ruto has read the constitution, by now he would have apologized to the people and the Kenyans who lost their properties, Kenyans who are injured during these campaign spree that he engaged in Nairobi. But because he is senseless, because he is mindless, because the man seems to or appears to be out of control of his faculties, he does not even understand that Kenyans were injured during that particular time. If Mr. William Ruto understands our constitution, he will not be giving these fake promises that he's giving on day-to-day basis. He would at least understand that currently the government speaks through declarations and through cabinet memos and through properly documented decisions by the Senate, the executive. If Mr. William Ruto understands our constitution, he would have understood that it's not just easy for him to go and say he's going to spend money to buy a photocopier machine for chapatis without that resolution being passed by cabinet. And most importantly, without a budget being created for it by the oversight organ. But the unfortunate thing is that Mr. William Ruto has captured all our institutions. He has captured parliament. The judiciary is struggling and fighting for its life because Mr. William Ruto is strangling the judiciary. Parliament is one of the biggest failures that this country has suffered Fortunately, we are having a big portion of parliament that is now singing the tune of the in his campaigns in Nairobi, when Kenyans lost their properties, when Kenyans were mugged, when Kenyans were pickpocketed. A member of parliament in that campaign trail, listening to him saying that I'll buy a machine to make chapatis, knowing well that the budget has not provided for it, how else can he hold this man to account? So, my brothers and sisters, we are having to sacrifice ourselves to reclaim this country, to rebuild this country, and to redeem this country. When we enacted the new constitution, Dibal, we give unto ourselves a document that was to give and to always be the cardinal north. We wanted to break away from the past. We wanted a new beginning. And therefore, the Constitution, when we diagnosed the problem that the country was facing, we prescribed a cure for it. And the cure finds itself well seated within the four corners of the Constitution. But I keep on saying as I land, it is not enough just to have a new constitution, a good constitution, a progressive constitution, or good laws. And I'll take you back the memory lane. In 1963, when we got the Lancaster Constitution, Kenyatta 1 came, atrocities were committed, the economy collapsed, people were killed, to mention but a few, Gamapinto and JM, and we passed that era. Moi came, again with the Lancaster Constitution. Goldenberg happened, people were killed, people were detained without trial, human rights were violated, our public land was stolen. Again with the 1963 Constitution. But Kibaki came 2002 to 2013. The same document that Moi and Kenyatta abused. The same constitution that Moi used to oppress Kenyans was again applied by Kibaki. The economy grew, the infrastructure expanded, human rights, human rights were restored, the democratic complementary institutions were restored. What does that tell you? That other than just having a good constitution, we also need to check on the character of the person at the helm. Let me take you now to 2022, 2027, 2025. A man in the name of William Ruto, with a new constitution, a progressive one, a constitution that has created serious checks and balances, a constitution that has created the separation of powers. It has created the complementary institutions, but they have not all been mutilated. Yet he is one of the person with the best constitution. Why? Because his character is questionable. Because his behavior is questionable. Because he does not believe in this constitution. So even as we strive and as we pride ourselves of having good constitution, we must check on the character of the person at the helm. Is that person trustworthy? Is that person an honest person? Does that person hold the pillar of integrity? Can that person be called to account? Can that person be transparent? Can that person be able to respect the rule of law, even as bad as it is or as good as it is? If that person does not meet those qualifications, then that person does not befit to be the president of the Republic of Kenya. And that's why I'm saying, as I land, it is important to start exploring the possibilities within which we can have the mental status of Mr. William Ruto checked. And Article 144 and Article 145 of the Constitution. Because if you see a man who lies from morning from sunrise to sunset, he lies even to blatantly lie. It tells you this man must not be in the full faculty of his in full control of his faculties. And that is Parliament. If Parliament was what is contemplated to be in the Constitution, they would have at least tabled a motion to discuss the mental infirmity or the mental stability or the mental wellness of Mr. William Ruto. To me, if I was to vote and give a card, I would give a red card as to his mental capacity to govern this country and to continue governing this country. I land.
All right, thank you, Ndegwe. But don't you think also that is a very strong verbiage when you talk about the mental capacity? And I will challenge you as an advocate. The burden of proof is very key. When you say that we have gangs that they were accompanying the president, how are they associated with the president? I think that's such a strong statement to make without any stitch of evidence. And for you as an advocate, I know evidence is
Dibal, if I
yes.
was to just respond to your inquiry, Mr. William Ruto knows that people apologize. I think he does not have the feelings or the senses. I think they are long gone. Number two, on the question of the mental infirmity, the At times, he can suffer mental illness. And when you say mental illness, and for people who can assess whether he's in full control of his faculties, and that's why we are challenging Parliament, because Parliament is the institution where that should happen. Please bring a motion to discuss the conduct of the president. Bring a motion to discuss the status of his mental health, so that then the people who are who have the capacity can then form the tribunal to assess his mental capacity to continue leading this country.
All right, thank you. Daniel Mazo, I think that is the honor that you'll be given as well. I'll come to you momentarily. Let me hear from Professor Peter Kagwanja. We tried to get you at some point, but we couldn't. Are you around? And Haman Manyora, I also want just to get a reaction from you as well. Peter Kagwanja, briefly, you've had Ndegwa.
Yes, yes, I have had,
Yes.
Begwai. So I wanted to arrive home so that I can speak to you comfortably, because this subject is very loaded, and it can sometimes be confusing. Yes, I am aware of the broadside declarations, what you call the Sokomjinga governance. Unaamka asubuhi, you reach Sokomjinga, you are inspired by the people you see, you make declarations. This country has never been run through Sokomjinga declaration, except for a short while during the Moi era, where Maisy eating chapatis in kiosk, and big declarations that have far-reaching implications for generations are made. I thought that we are over those until what is going on. Of course, the other issue is the rule of law, which I find problematic. This country's problem is not about the rule of law. The law is very clear. We know what needs to be done. The Africa Peer Review Mechanism reviewed this country and said that assessing all our institutions, Kenya has all it takes to have a wonderful democracy. And the question they ask is, why are things not adding up? Why eventually did we end up having the 2007-2008 impasse, or if you wish, crisis? Why are we where we are now, despite having one of the most liberal constitutions on planet Earth? Even the South African constitution does not get closer to ours. We have the best. Why are things not adding up? The issue is simple and square. It is about the quality of our leadership, the character of the men and women who are governing over us. And I hold them to account. Let anybody raise their hands and say that they are ruling, they have what it takes to be a leader of a noble country like this one. Even the men of church or the men of faith have here, I think, is what Degwa was saying, is that we need to go back to Chinua Achebe and ask what is the trouble with Nigeria? And the answer is clear. It is the trouble with Nigeria as the trouble with Kenya and many other African countries is simply and squarely a problem of leadership. In this country, I know we have talked about, but he's within a league of leaders who have no integrity, leaders who will speak from the two sides of the mouth at the same time. They claim nobility of character. They will even swear with all the oracles they know that they are doing what is right. They are serving the nationalistic values. They claim all the titles, Pan-Africanist, nationalist, and all that. But what they are simply doing is they are seeking for their pockets. There's nothing else they are doing. And I think where to begin to solve the problem of this country is to accept that we have the rule of law, because we have the law that is supposed to govern the rule. Two, we have all the systems of governance that you need to govern a country like Kenya. And that the problem is who we are. Those who are keen on history will recall the 18th of March, 2002. Mzee Moi stood up anointed 8 men, I think, and said that these men are going to rule this country for 100 years. And he named them and gave them positions. Some were called chairmen, and others became secretary generals of then the almighty Kano. And from that date to date, we are reading under the legacy of that declaration. Yesterday, I am in ODM, today I'm in UDA, and tomorrow I'll be back with ODM as a partner. And this is the revolving door we are going through. Earlier on, listening to this debate, somebody was asking whether Maraga or maybe the Gen Zs are going to offer an alternative to this legacy of Mzee Moi. And I think that's not where to go. The issue is we need to insist on the nobility of the character of those who govern us. And unless we address governance in terms of the morality, the ethical, and the value-based kind of leadership that we need, I don't think we are going anywhere. The other problem related to that is that we have very short memory. The devils of yesterday are the angels of today in us, and the difference perhaps can even be months. It doesn't, and sometimes even days. We have such a short memory as a people. We don't value history. We don't value what it takes to maintain a character of our generation, and that is what is ailing us. I like studying the East, Japan, and and China particularly, because at the base of their leadership is what we call an ethical code. And this ethical code is taught from the beginning to the end. That's what they call the Confucian ethos. And the Confucian ethos is not about the rule of law. It is not about the law men and women create to govern their relationship. It is the values and the morality that governs you. And the problem with this country, from the church to from the pulpit to the podium, from the classroom to the roadside, the problem is that we have that problem of morality. And morality, or a moral ethical leadership, is what we are missing. William Ruto knows the Constitution. He knows what he doesn't like about it, and he knows what he likes about it. He was one of those people who are fighting it. He was in the red when others were in the green. Raila Odinga was in the green. So we all know what this law is about and what we liked it about it, and what we didn't like about it. We all passed it, and now it's our law. So they know the law. Let's not pretend that they don't know the law. But the point is, they want to turn their law to their advantage and to make public and private gains, not public gains. When you change SHA, from NHIF to SHA, the logic is not to help the people. We know that. The logic is to import new machines, introduce new systems, and pass new budgets that are going to make your war chest for the coming election. That's all, simple and clear. So time are gone when we introduced changes to our system in order to help our people and with our people in mind. This time we are doing things with our pockets, our private gains in mind. That's the problem. Unfortunately, we can see through this. But the problem is we can do nothing because we have not mobilized. They own the parties. William Ruto owns UDA. Raila Odinga owns ODM. Uhuru Kenyatta owns Jubilee. And others own the parties. And many others will, because they own the instruments that get you to power. So the point here is we have not adding up. They are adding up because called Upper Volta. Upper Volta just looked at itself and found that it is a small country, but it can make big gains if it invested in the characters of its leaders. And that's how Thomas Sankara was born. Now, Thomas Sankara revolutionized that country, set a model of how to make their country big. He changed the name of the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, and called his people Burkinabe, the upright men, the country of upright men and women. Now, to remind them every morning that you are supposed to be upright, his endeavor was to create a country that is of noble character. And when he did that, somehow he was assassinated, and that story is wrong, and we cannot tell it today. But many years later, in the same country, because good ideas never die, we have a new leader there who is doing what Thomas Sankara was doing. And even if the new leader goes, another one will rise, because countries are about character. They're not about laws. Laws will be changed, but good character never change. Kenya need to have men and women of upright character. People who don't lie, people who don't cheat, people who live a life of integrity, and people who can be emulated by this and future generation. Debar, I have rested my case.
Thank you. Nobility of character, the land of upright man, Burkina Faso. We hope also that we will restore. We have everything that we do need in our country as far as nobility of character is concerned, is just to implement this. The national values, 10 of them, Article 10 of the Constitution is there. I want just to invite Kevo, because of interest of time. I think we've really stretched it so that we can also land this. Kevo, I want to give the mic to you, and also New Kenya as well. Say something. At least we hear the youthful voices, as well as Aman Manyora also will also just react to some of the sentiments that have been raised.
Okay, thank you. That from where I sit, Ruto really understands what he is doing. And from the way I see it, it's that he looks at it like a war. It is like he's having people who are fighting him, and it is no longer about working for Kenyans and anything. It's about him retaining his position. So, and you look at it this way, that Ruto is using those strategies that were only effective during the time of Moi, like declarations on the road and lying when there was no internet, or the information prevalence was very low. But right now, I think it is very clear that you cannot lie to Kenyans like Moi used to do and get away. So I think, again, the kind of lies that Ruto make who have actually gone to school, and we can actually decipher what he is doing behind the backs and everything. So I think now it will become for them to lie to us, and they will be so much exposed that it will become ridiculous and out of question. And like
Dibal, I can't hear anyone. It has gone quiet. What's happening?
You can't hear me.
I can hear you, Joshua.
I thought you were to invite Kevin, but
Yeah,
I don't
Kevin.
think he.
He's been on. He's been on. I think maybe you missed it out, or he's just been speaking. And thank you, Kevin.
Oh,
Joshua, Kipto, we will get to you. I think Kevin was on. Kevin, are you done?
just a bit before.
Yeah. I think we've gotten the main thrust of your point, just for the interest of time, so that I don't keep everyone here for quite a long time. I know we have also a busy day tomorrow. Kindly, if you may allow me, Kevin.
Okay.
I want just to hand over the mic to New Kenya, then I'll give a mic to Herman Manyora to say something. New Kenya, briefly. New Kenya.
Thank you very much, Dibal. Dibal, evening.
Good evening to you.
I want to be very brief and precise. Now, limit them so that the other people who have never been this space. Now Ruto is praising Ruto in everything. So the
Thank you, New Kenya, for that sentiment, and the politicians also, they've heard you, and that is well noted. Herman Manyora, over to you briefly.
Thank you, Deba. I was in when you started, and I've just landed in again. Coming, I hear landing is giving up the mic. We are learning from these young people. I know. I remember the days we used to debate in the studios with you and some of these guys. I look around, I see very, very capable young people like Flavia, and I'm just amazed, and I'm happy. I think almost every Sunday to be here with you. I just want to say this. Uh, for the past, I don't know how many years, getting to 10 or something like that, I've been producing a YouTube video every Saturday. Yesterday, I took time to look at President Ruto's tour in Nairobi. And I summarized that tour in just one word or two: fake. That everything about that tour was fake. There was nothing really about it. From the people cheering him to the things he was saying, everything was just fake. Kenyans on this space and beyond. It, our thinking that William Ruto does not know. Yeah, I thought about it after I did that video yesterday. So this has just crossed my mind, and I'm sharing with you. Is it possible that Ruto doesn't know that we know what he's telling us is fake? It's most unlikely that he doesn't know. He knows. Then the question must be, if he knows, we know he's telling us lies and is making fake promises and is doing all these things that don't make sense. Why do you think Ruto is doing what he's doing? I want to pose this to Kenyans, because if you think hard about it, then you might get the answer as to why these things are happening. Yet people who are making them happen, no, we know they are fake. What are they preparing for us? That is a hard question. I have no answers. When somebody is coming to Nairobi, for example, and they know they don't have a following in Nairobi, and they are moving around with the sort of people we saw, making the sort of promises we had. Why do you think somebody is doing that? This is what I want Kabando, Wakabando, Kagwanja, the rest, Flavia, and all of you young people here. I'm leaving you with that. Try to figure out why Ruto would be doing the things he's doing across the country, yet he knows we are even laughing at them. We are caricaturing him. Chapatis floating on water and people swimming across. Why do you think he would do what he's doing? What is he preparing us for? Diba, let me land the way the young people are saying.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. You raised a very poignant question there. Kabano, you want to respond to that? Also, you can cognate that with the issue of the SK Mashara raising concern about the voter register. Then we bring it to a close. I'll just give each of you some time to just give us some closing remarks as well. Over to you. Then Kavuli also, I think Kavuli has a question. We want to give more of the voices of the Gen Zs as well. But you want to respond to that, Kabando? Thank you.
Yes. First is to encourage the young generation to engage, and also critically so is important, but to avoid what you may call generalization, the fallacy of generalization, or condemning a wholesale class, like we have had in the past, like in Uganda, when the Asian community was condemned and there was an exodus, and it had serious implications. Yet Indians were very instrumental also in the fight for independence of Uganda. Just like in Kenya, we had Makia Singh, we had Pio Gama Pinto, very patriotic nationalists, although they came from India. We all came from somewhere. And also in political classes, there are individuals. Even now, if you go to the UDA party, I may not agree with it as a party. I may not be part of that extension, but there are individuals that you can pick. I may not agree for reasons with ODM, but I will celebrate Dr. Nyikal as an icon, as a legend of the contributions in University Academic Staff Union, UASU, in the student organization of University of Nairobi, as a professor in the University Medical School, Premier, University of Nairobi, as a director of medical services, and as a very good member of parliament. So I'm saying we can isolate cases. Otherwise, we may have a difficulty in engagement. As I said in the beginning, we are listening more and more, not because we are making a favor to the young people. They have the numbers. Let me just, for instance, mention, as I was making a correction on Manzo when he said that one needs to be that 5 years. Article 137 of the Constitution of Kenya says that a person qualifies for nomination as a president, as a presidential candidate, if that person is a citizen by birth, a person is qualified to stand for election as a member of parliament, also qualifies to be a presidential candidate, and is nominated by a party or is an independent candidate. And then out of the 47 counties, you need only 24. That is the majority of the counties to have each county 2,000 registered voters endorsing your application or nomination, either as an independent or a nominee by a registered political party, which means the nearly 8 million who did not vote, the nearly 5 to 6 million, if not 7, who had not qualified to register as voters in 2022 are now to engage consciously and with the conscience and with the political hygiene and the maturity of the agenda. That is a number that is momentous, is phenomenal, can cause an upset away from the conventional methods, away from the geopolitical and ethnic formations that have determined our politics. And this is a red flag we got. Let me not call it even a red flag. Let's say it is a torch we got last year in the Gen Z nonviolent, tribeless, fearless uprising. So it's a loaded message we received across generations. And we need to blend our thinking, the old people, the young people. If in a certain area, a person comes as an independent and qualifies to be elected of any seat, and integrity is put as a front banner of that Kadisha or contest, you can find across the country very many individuals being elected to dominate county assemblies, the national assemblies, the Senate, and even gubernatorial. So there is a question, but the answer is and marginalization. I wanted to make this comment about this controversial issue that has been generated because of what Mzee Macharia is alleged. In my view, the Royal Media Services have played a very, very critical and historic role in galvanizing consciousness, awareness, even the vernacular stations, as they may have limitations, they have gone to percolate innovation. Who is more litigious, somebody who is prone to go to court on all madam issues, and abusing the daring is very, very important, and you do that from young age, and you can Sharia did as he was traveling to America. You a man of temerity, courage, and brilliance, and he dares, and so it's important to appreciate. But I want to quickly say this as a response to what he said, with a total respect for Kenya's democracy. Number one, in response to whether Raila won in 2022, I know it's a tiring issue. I've seen Kanchore, the chief agent, what he has just said today, that is unspoken and untold. It's the fact that Raila slept through his own presidential campaign strategy meetings. The Naivasha retreat that Dr. S.K. Macharia mentioned, where he was trying things, and I have it on authority of proximity because we were there in his campaign. We were in there as a mayor, and we were supporting him, even putting his portrait on our posters everywhere in the village, and saying, even if you deny me at their time, this man comes to meetings, he is sleeping. He did not speak to even his candidate across, maybe a few, but the majority that I know, from Meru, from Laikipia, from Isiolo and all that, there was no conversation or attachment to the presidential campaign because the deep state, with the cabinet secretaries and the mandarins of top state organs were in charge. Number three, he never invested in agents in the entire Mount Kenya region, yet we still gave him nearly 1.5 million votes. Those who volunteered before voting day, were never even facilitated or compensated those who are recruited to volunteer as his campaigners. And I remember on a Saturday, the 6th of August, in the evening, so there was like a kind of a mutiny over that weekend. People are calling us. I was called even by the running mate, Honorable Mother Karua, on a Saturday, You know, we don't have agents in Nyeri, we don't have agents in Kenya, we don't have agents in like Laikipia, everywhere. So how do we expect to win? We say, of course, it's democracy, so we don't need to protect our vote. But what's the meaning of agents? And people can say, why didn't you volunteer agents? We had agents, we tried to volunteer where we could, but still there was mismanagement. And what I would say is, even if people can go to the clips, even in our own counties, like in Nyeri, even in Embu, the ODM characters would come to be masters of ceremonies. In our own villages, they were imported, showing us the middle finger, embarrassingly mocking the mic on us as voters. Our own voters watched. One day I had to patch on Raila's vehicle at a place called Chaka in Kenya, Nyeri County, to request him to allow us, the local people who are campaigning on Azimio, as governors, as senators, as members of parliament, as women reps, as we traversed Kieni, Madeira, Mukurweini, Udaya, Teto, Nyeri town, to at least give us some prominence, to allow us to speak. As we seek our vote, we also ask for his vote. But for him and his team, even the running mate, Mother Karua, I watched that, I have never said this, did not have even the opportunity to pick the mic in our own geopolitical region and moderate those functions for people to see that she was in charge, and yet we expected her to deliver the Mount Kenya region. As opposed to how Ruto allowed the Rigathi, sorry for the fallout later, to move around and dominate. And wherever they went, you'd allow the local people to play a part. So what I would say in conclusion, the Dr. SK story is innocent. It is even necessary. However, we abuse the Raila story, aggravations and the lamentations. It is a story for the books. It's a story for history, not for the days ahead. We focus ahead because it is necessary now to invest. As we can analyze, we can criticize, yes, but more effort now in organizing, in encouraging, in motivating, in networking, so that the template that emerges ahead of 2027 is not just about ODM or Wiper or UDA, is about the integrity charter, the accountability charter that is percolating, that is going down to the village, down to the police station, down to the ward, so that those who are thieves, those who have who are murderers, those who are looters, those who have caused impunity in Kenya will even have shame to dare to go to enlist in a political party to contest. But so long as we don't make it the criminality of corruption, the criminality of impunity, and the ethnic bigotry, and the sort of statement I see some of our Astahel friends, members of parliament and the Senate saying, oh, we are going to isolate this region. Oh, the rules are complaining alone. Oh, we are going to marginalize the Kalenjin, or nobody can come from the Kaba community to lead. We forget we have the Giriamas, we have the Digos, we have, the Somalis, we have people from Borana community. The dream of the founders of Kenya was easily revived in 2002, and I'm happy that we all talk about that rainbow, because although Kibaki was a torchbearer up there, we had call that did not get the subsequently, except the hiccups that followed thereafter because of internal implosions. There was still a lot of optimism and hope. And on day one in office, Mwai Kibaki was able to deliver free primary education. Now, on day one of the next election, winning or losing we individually, we should have a Kenya where on day one, merchants of impunity are listed, and on day one, we have even that commission on the state capture inquiry, and on day one, to celebrate integrity of systems and individuals and of leadership without any hesitation. I strongly believe that that can happen, and it will happen. I want to reiterate in final word that Kenyans' optimism and hope is on the horizon, and it is unstoppable. It will happen. Let's not lose hope.
All right, let's not lose hope. I want to also give Daniel Changi your closing remarks. Let's hear from you as well. Professor?
Thank you very much. I think it has been a very exciting exchange, and I agree with the. I want to say this: the problem in this country from 1963 and even before that has been the politician. The politicians have moved themselves into the center of the Kenyan universe and have locked opportunities away from the Kenyan people. So we must reset our country. I'm hearing about the one way that is being suggested in our discussions here. It's on how to have a different electoral practice. But it's the same group of people who are going to change the colors they wear and present themselves as the saviors of this country. Unfortunately for them, this country has changed. And I think the younger people in our nation are not going to make it business as usual come 2027. The rule of law be applied. But that's my view, and thank you very much, Debao, for this evening.
Thank you, Prof. I really do appreciate your sentiments there. Very enlightening. I want just to, before I come to Joshua Kipto and Haman Manyora, and also give Degwa Jiro also a chance as well, and Daniel Marzo, there is Kavuli, Kavuli Bernard as well, and also Albert Nsengu. Yeah, could we just hear your voices respectively? We just beginning with the Kavuli. Kavuli, kindly unmute if you're speaking.
Okay, thank you so much, Dbal, for this opportunity to speak. I read the topic of the discussion today is Broadside Declaration and the rule of law. We know that this government is a government of broad-based things, broad things. You know, broad lies. They lie from morning to evening. They make declarations that are not only broadside, but they are also unconstitutional, ridiculous, you know, undoable. The only thing that is not broad in this government is their brains, because they have no brains at all. I hope I'm not going to be too harsh on anyone, but that's a fact. Even abductions are also broad. They are abducting even foreigners and, you know, everyone else around the country, outside the country. So it's a sad state of affairs in the country as we speak. And as one of the Gen Z representatives and person who has been very active on this movement, I want to say that we are determined to have a government that speaks for the people, a government by the people, because it's a government of cartels. Cartels have united, they have captured everything. You know, the parliament is captured. They also want to capture the judiciary illegally and unconstitutionally. We are also aware that they are planning to install their their proxies, their cronies in the commission of the IEBC. It doesn't matter who become the chair or the commissioners anyway. We are going to do things the other way around, because in 2027, we shall vote at the polling station and protect our votes. It will be very impossible for them to steal the elections. So I want to say that, and I speak on behalf of Gen Zs and I speak for Gen Zs. I want to say that the young people of Kenya are prepared. They are ready to have a new government, to have change in this leadership of our country. And I would like to request everybody, every young person listening to me tonight, to stand strong. Some of us, including myself and Billy, have seen him in this conversation, in this space. We were tortured, we were severely tortured. We went through a very dehumanizing experience, but we still have the voice to speak. We have some energy left in us to speak. We have some little energy that we have to utilize, because we don't have time to buy fear or to buy intimidations. So this is our time, Kenyans. And thank you so much, Herman. I've heard Herman, eloquently and boldly speak about lies and what about that man says, And I hope also Ndegwajiri will also speak about the same. So thank you so much. I like listening to these people. Herman Kabado is my good friend, Ndegwa, including also Dan Mahanso and the rest. So I'm happy to be a young Kenyan born in this generation, because we've seen so many things. So many things have happened that could not happen before, during the time of our forefathers and all those other people who passed or who were in the whole generation. So I think I'll be very proud to say that let us, come together. Let us think together and make our country move forward. We must liberate our country from the shackles of lies, tribalism, bad leadership, corruption that is stinking to the highest heaven. Nothing is working in this country, and nothing can work so long as those guys are in office. Nothing can work. Absolutely nothing. I think the only thing that these people can say that is true is only about their names. Otherwise, every time they speak lies. They open their mouth to speak lies. When they are walking like they smell corruption. Everything in this government is stinking.
Thank you.
So,
for the interest of time, I think we've got to the gist
yes,
of it. Kavuli, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Right. I want us to invite Albert. Then I think we'll bring it to a close. Albert, kindly take over the mic. Brevity is of essence because of time. You have also tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, Demal, and definitely the panelists. It's an honor, definitely, to be amongst the senior members on the platform. In the interest of time, I'll just deliver on a few things. Like many of you, looking back, we supported this government while it was coming into power, but we've fallen out on a number of issues, on a number of deliverables. I feel like I've even gone to war with some of my colleagues on some topical issues on how the government is delivering them, and I think Professor Herman just asked us to think of what is the next phase, or why is the president actually doing such things, going out, irrespective of him knowing what's on the ground. Prof, I think I would want to invite us to the thought that in the first, there's a last 2 years to election, or 1.5 years to election. So I think the president or the presidency now will be all out to dish out goodies. Definitely, I think for Kenyans, political rallies are some ways that the politicians use to actually test the waters, to see what's on the ground, and also dish out the stolen money or the money that needs to be washed. I think we've had issues of now money that has been lost. I think we have the issues with the Auditor General that has just also been released, that some the exchequers are also not probably in line. And in my view, we will see more and more of that from the government side. We'll see more and more of trying to go out and present some goodies to the local people. The elite on this side, we are more on social media and everything, but I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the ground. And because that's where, of course, the political class will be amassing the votes from. If, of course, from the Twitter platforms or from the Gen Zote movement, we can, or we can actually pass the voice on the ground, then we will be able to actually probably have a chance of overturning things come 2027. I see a situation where probably we will punish the president by voting in the second probable person. I think it's the Biden Trump way that we saw when Biden was coming into office in the first round, that they voted in Biden, irrespective of age, irrespective of whatever, just to make sure that Trump went home. We might end up in such a situation. So I think as Kenyans, then we have to know who are we floating to be the second person, or else also the government side might be also preparing itself. And what will happen if you have Ruto or Raila on the ballot? Then not in one team, but rather in two different teams. Then do we have an option of saying, is it a split vote, or do we have an option of saying we will kick out Ruto just to bring in Raila or such a thing? I think it's open to a discussion or open to us. Probably some seniors can also guide us on such. But in my view, we have to keep planning, or we have to keep organizing our house definitely, so that we put out a candidate that we are sure of integrity, a candidate that we know that will actually drive us to a prosperous Kenya that we desire. I'm happy to, of course, keep sharing in other sessions. Because of time, I'll want to drop at that. I wanted to just address this Haman topic, but I'm happy to listen in also. Asante sana Debala.
Thank you, Albert and Sengu there. I really appreciate your sentiments. Ronyo, briefly, as we're winding up, Ronyo, I yield the
Thank,
floor to you.
thank thank you so much, Jibal. I'll just take a minute. I will just try to describe our country, Kenya, in just one or two statements. Like Kenya has been turned to a jungle, where we talk of big five. Now, in Kenya, we talk of these big five tribes, and they have reduced all of us to be speaking about only these five tribes, where we either talk of Kalenjin, whether we talk about Luo, we talk about Kikuyu, we talk about Kambas, or we talk about the Luyas. And we as Gen Zs and millennials, we are trying to remove that conversation where when I walk into an office, you don't want to you don't have to ask me my full name so that you can figure out where I come from, or you don't have to listen to my accent so that you know whether you're going to give me the services or not. So our country has to stop. We have to come out of that mentality where we are only discussing about few communities, and the rest of us are just sosa or kachumbari. We have all of us to be the main dish. We have to speak the language where all of what we are looking for as the Gen Zs and the millennial is a country that accommodates everybody, irrespective of where you come from. And unless we have that candid discussion, we will not have a country. We will not have development that we are looking for. And that is what that's what the community, that's what the current government is trying to reduce us to have us being controlled by religion, or by being controlled by this big five. That is a conversation that we cannot have. We must have a conversation where everybody is included, irrespective of where you come from. Thank you so much, Dipal.
Thank you, Ronyo. I think we are done. I can see also the presence of Honorable Abus Mwago. Yeah. Would you want to say something, Mheshimiwa? Would be an honor just to hear from you as well. All right. Maybe he's not heard me. Mheshimiwa, I yield the floor to you. Kindly accept my invite. In the meantime, we can hear from just closing remarks as we're winding up right now. Let's hear from Joshua Kipto, no, Daniel Mazo. Then we'll come.
I think we need to get our country right. Really, we need to encourage everybody, and we need to encourage that culture of people wanting to do the right thing, so that when it comes to the election for the truth, and I really want to encourage Kenyans and the young people, and especially call upon the young people, those who are not registered as Kenyans, please take your ID, and when the IBC is constituted, then please register as a voter, and when the day of election comes, also it is important to patriotically vote a Kenyan who can take the country to the next level. Our worst nightmare is corruption. The ESCC, which is supposed to fight corruption, is so weakened, and many other institutions are weakened. The ODPP, the courts, parliament. I mean, we need to get our country back. We need all these institutions be headed by the right people and the right people working there. And say that I've learned a lot this evening from the fellow participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Maazo, there, Senator of Makueni. Let's hear from Ndegwa.
Dibal, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Dibal, thank you.
Joshua Kipto,
Thank you very much,
yes,
fellow.
Ndegwa, just continue.
Thank you very much, fellow participants. As I land and as I wish you good night, we must ask ourselves why Mr. William Ruto keeps on referring to any person who is opposed to his extractive regime as a tribalist. And as you answer that question, you might then also to ask yourself whether we can practice positive tribalism, and whether if we practice positive tribalism, whether that can be coupled with an agenda to remove William Ruto. What am I saying? I am saying if I am able to mobilize the entire of the Kikuyu nation, if I am able to mobilize the entire of the Kamba nation as Kambas, or the Kisses nations as Kisses, or the Mijikenda nations as Mijikendas, or the Luo nation as Luo, as Luo nation, with the sole putting our ethnicity into motion, if the intention that we want to achieve from where we come from and from the mobilization units of where we come from, with a clear agenda of removing Mr. William Ruto, is it really a bad thing? Why am I saying so? Because Mr. William Ruto, being whom he is, he has now hijacked the Gen Z rallying call, the Gen Z mantra. Remember, the Gen Z mantra was about tribeless, was about leaderless. He's now still speaking that language. so that at fullness of time, any person opposed to his bad governance is labeled tribalist, and for him, he only remains as the only person who is waving the card of tribelessness. So, in my view, if we're able to practice positive ethnicity for purpose of removing Mr. William Ruto, me, I think I would be home and dry. Finally, I thank you all for your contribution. I look forward to the next debate next Sunday as we ponder about the next topic so that we are able to get this country back on rail. The country is sick, the country is ailing, the country is in ICU, and if we take much more time, we'll find this country resting in peace in a grave. And we therefore say that as it has been submitted by Honorable Kabando Kabando, Professor Manyora, and Professor Daniel, and others, even Kavuli, let us look at the character of the individuals that we are electing. Garbage in, garbage out. If we elect garbage, we expect garbage. If we elect men and women of substance, men and women of character, then we expect that our nation will grow. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a good night.
Thank you very much, Joshua Kipcho.
Thank you, Dibal. I think in the interest of time, I'll be more brief. My summary is that we seem to understand the issues. We know what is at play. What matters at this point then is how then or what gives. I'll just put it in two ways. One, on the part of the government, you can see that the government has already is out of the block, or the president is off the block already campaigning or already on the campaign mode. My thinking would be 27 then would be a referendum on the signature programs projects that he's trying to sell. It would make greater sense, and with a bit of political stability that comes with ODM joining government, be no excuse for government not delivering at least their signature program projects. That's what matters the most, because more or less responding positively to concerns raised by people would make a lot of sense. The government at this point needs to be alive to the fact that you have a restive society, restive citizenry and populace, and more empowered one, in the sense that the demands are clear: proper governance, value for money, and more or less like solutions that are tangible, visible, and just right people can identify with. That will make the difference. On the part of the opposition, or as well as the new emerging powers, as the different speakers have spoken about here, it's time now to shed off that idea of leaderless. It's now the time to identify leadership, but at the same time, roll up the sleeves and do what matters the most. As I'd said, it's about organization. It's about time to then, for the younger population, I'm happy with one of the speakers who came and mentioned that for them, this is their first time experiencing, especially the 18 to 23-year-old. But it's never too early. You cannot rest on your laurels assuming that you're still young. This is our first time. No. The idea should be, if 24 happen thanks to the mobilization skill of the same age group, then nothing stops them in converting the same energy into tangible, actionable steps. Like, for example, picking up IDs. Importantly, as soon as IBC is constituted, registering votes and having a track of the same newly registered voters. If it was a thing to mobilize people through this social media platform, then it can still be the same channel through which this new energy, new block can be able to trace themselves, know where they are spread out, and ensure that across the republic, in a leadership that you can own. And as that happens, it is clear that the political class is already organized into and practically where we are as a political, more or less like politically speaking, we are more or less a mixture, both demographically, age-wise, ethnically. When you combine all those factors, there is never absolutism. There is need for give and take, whereby a coalition can be of different components, but as long as your agenda that you can identify with within a particular formation is visible and can be there, that can be a thing. So that makes even much easier to dream and aspire to capture power. So you can see the political class is already in that space. No one would have imagined that in a year or so before you'd have Raila and Ruto on the same page 2 years from election. And as Manzo was trying to portray that there may be more candidates on the ballot, even contending that maybe even Raila will be in the ballot, that is normal, or it's a norm in politics. It's a never say never kind of a profession. So the same must apply even to the new energy or the new block that is here with us. There must be flexibility. You don't come and I feel that has been the missing piece. If you follow conversations on Twitter, people look for puritanism and absolutism, whereby we have this aspect that at a slightest mistake, or more or less like one person is seen to have a different opinion, there's an aspect of cancelling that comes in pretty quickly. The cancel culture has taken root that at this within a period of time you cancel all potential leaders within the movements are cancelled out. Then you remain leaderless and you become rudderless. So it becomes pointless. So our political culture has proven that only the flexible ones make it. I think Raila is a successful politician basically because of his flexibility. He falls tomorrow morning, he wakes up as if nothing happened and moves. We'll make all the noises. He'll be branded, whatever will be branded. But he seemed to have mastered the game. That how do you explain that for 25 years he seemed to be the one revolving politics, the Kenyan politics has been revolving around him throughout, and he's never. At the end of the day, this year 2025 will be critical. How the opposition will maintain momentum on agendas, issues, focus on the needs of the people. The government, on the other hand, their work is cut out. How can the government deliver? For government, I find it quite easy. Just deliver. It is easy on paper, but in reality, the gauntlet is out for the president to prove. Otherwise, such conversations, such spaces make a whole difference and will set the ball rolling for the next election. With that, I want to appreciate the audience. I want to appreciate Dibal. I think Benji was here, your co-host. I want to appreciate every single person who contributed, as well as even those who listened. Thank you. God bless. Have a good night.
Thank you, Joshua Kipto. Really appreciate your sentiment this evening as well. We look forward to hearing more from you. Very insightful indeed. Haman Manyora, I want to, and Peter Kagwanja, just your final remarks on Kabando, then we call it a wrap. I know we've overstayed our welcome, as they always say. Briefly, over to you.
Thank you, Deba. This is Manyora. My closing remarks will be a challenge to the people of this country by way of a question. And the question is, do we think removing William Ruto is a joke? My point of reference in attempting to answer that question, but very, very briefly, will be S.K. Macharia. What was S.K. Macharia saying? Apart from saying that Raila seemed to have betrayed those who have supported him, emphasizing how from as early as 1992 he supported Aluo in the name of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, how he went against the grain by offending his community to support Raila Odinga. That wasn't even the point he was making. The point he was making, if Raila could do what he did, do we Kenyans think removing Ruto is going to be a walk in the park? That is the message. And SK is challenging Kenyans, as I repeat on his behalf this evening. the call was coming. How you can hear me? Do you have an individual among those who want to be president who can do what Raila failed to do? Who is strong enough to withstand the heat from the likes of William Ruto? The sort of heat that has been directed against Raila, and he has given up his presidency, offending those who have supported him against all odds. When he looks around, I think he's asking, are these the men you think can remove William Ruto? And he's giving one challenge. Let any one of these people who are telling us they can remove Ruto show they have what it takes. Let them take one issue and run away with it. The issue of voter register. The bar, you are there with me when I challenged Khalwale, a member of that team committee. What was it called? The bar. They were trying to look at the constitution, whatever. It was led by Orengo and I think Raito Murungi. On your show, I told Boni Khalwale, unless you redo the voter register, there can be no free and fair election. He gave me an example of Nigeria saying auditing the register was enough to help Nigerians because they flagged out 20 million ghost voters. I told him in Kenya it would not work. That is what SK Macharia is saying. That for us to identify a person who can be better than Raila, it must be a person who can take tough issues and face them head on. Can any of these people who want to be president today take on an issue like the issue of voter register? Not just cheering about IBC, who will be the chairman, who are the commissioners. Those things will happen. Will be one way of telling SK Macharia and those like Manyora here that indeed you will give Kenyans what Raila didn't give them. Let me land, like the young people say, and good night, everybody.
Thank you, Harman Manyora. Appreciate your sentiment. Professor Peter Kagwanja, briefly, so that I can.
Things. One, that we need to think beyond a one-day democracy, because that's what we are working toward. When we talk about IEBC, we talk about all these things. We are simply talking about what will happen on the 10th of August, 2027. And Kenya is a perfect one-day democracy. We need to move beyond that and we will work every day like we are defending our democracy. We should not be talking about what the Gen Zs are going to do in 2027. We should be talking about what they are doing today. So we need to literally organize around our democracy on a day-to-day basis, rather than working towards a one-day democracy, which is the voting day democracy. And that was the tragedy of the Greek democracy, which Plato and others spoke about. Two, I think we need to go beyond William Ruto. People have, deified him. Others are lionizing him. Others, he cannot be removed. Or I don't think William Ruto should be the agenda. The agenda is what Kenya wants. What kind of Kenya do we want? And we work towards the Kenya we want, not the Kenya, not removing William Ruto. I lived at a time when we were more obsessed about getting rid of Moi. Moi must go. Moi must go. And I mean that's very tired. I think we need to begin to have an agenda, and people are simply ganging up to get rid of William Ruto. It's important to get rid of him because he has, of the many things that have been said about him, the liar and all. But I think their agenda should be greater than that. It's building the kind of a character of Kenya that is contrary to what William Ruto represents. It is about a national agenda that is beyond the broadside declarations and Sokomujinga politics that he has returned into this Kenya. It is about a kind of leadership that is listening to those, to advise, that is listening more than talking, to the point that we have something that we can show. We lived at a time when Mwai Kibaki would come with a paper about wealth creation, then bring Vision 2030, and put people together to achieve a certain agenda. But today we are moving from one promise to another, one life to another, and so on. So we need to move beyond William Ruto and begin to reconstruct the kind of Kenya we want to see, and it is possible. So a democracy, everyday democracy, not a one-day voting day democracy, and an agenda that goes beyond William Ruto. I think that's what we need to do. Debal, and to all colleagues in this on this platform, good night to you, and thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I really do appreciate. Kabano, finally over to you, briefly.
Thank you very much, Dibal, and a lot of appreciation for the panelists, all the people who have spoken. I wish the views that have been generated, particularly from the young people on this platform and in this conversation, can be transcribed, and you text them and you contextualize them, and wherever they are conversing and wherever we are convening, such ideas and aspirations can be placed on the discussion table, because they are implementable, they are doable. And we are all in agreement that we need to be better, we can do better, we have the ability, we have the wealth of the intellectual resources, we are rich in hope, we are rich in optimism, and we are richest in young, energetic demography, young people who have awakened, and they are walking, they are riding, they are flying, and the ideas are being heard, they are being listened to, how to be actualized through placement in positions of visibility, positions of appointment, positions of elections, corporate, in sports federations, in welfare clubs, even in residential organizations, and the not-for-profit sector. The prominence is necessary, and that means that there needs to be good actions, pro-actions, so that we tell the story. The stories that we are hearing from the old people are not bad stories. We need to hear, even if the story is painful, even if it's a story of regret, like the story of SK Masharia is a genuine story, is an honest story of how, somebody was not listening, and how you go to a retreat that you are stopped as you are presenting an idea that will make that individual win. The story of, inertia in presidential campaign meetings, or even how young people are shortchanged in nomination lists. Those are stories that we should speak about, those that we sing about, and we have supported. And I include myself in that category of those who have been there. When they get opportunity, do they nominate their cronies? Do they nominate their kins, their children, their concubines, their brokers? So if you go to all these parties, you are presented with a nominated list in the county assemblies. How many of those nominated, the youth, the minorities, the women, or other categories, how many would you pick from the county 001 to county 19 to county 47, that Nairobi, that will merit that nomination? You look at it and you say, this person was nominated because this person has the ability, has the skills, or is positioned strategically to incorporate people who are likely to be excluded in this county, or in this assembly, or at the national level. When you are presented with that opportunity, where your party dominates, Do you go looking for your daughter or your son? Do you go looking for your Mr. Fix-It, who does businesses of acquiring properties or land or those transactions for businesses with the foreigners who are doing farming or mining in your area? Those are the hard questions that must now be asked, and the answer sought in what I will refer again as accountability charter, so that moving forward, the list of those being suggested for nominations, for appointments, even for future ambassadorial, the list is predictable and it is a list that can be scrutinized. We can probe it ahead so that we don't end up in an election. Then when you open your eyes, you are seeing a sister of so and so, a brother of so and so, a daughter of so and so, a son of so and so, a political broker of so and so, who add no value to the national conversation. So I conclude by saying the hope that is in this country has been revived and was revived in the Gen Z uprising of 2024. And like dark follows light, like the sun sets after rising, the cloud is already gathered, it will rain, and the rain will be showers of hope, of prosperity, of peace, of non-violence. Calm before a thunder will emerge and shock us who belong to that coterie of the team that we see there on the portrait, the newsmakers and all that, will be shocked, and that shock will be sweet for the country. God bless Kenya. Good night.
I want to appreciate you, Professor Daniel Lishangi, who is a professor at the University of Nairobi, geologist, and also consummate corporate governance expert. I want to thank you so much. Joshua Kipto, thank you for being here this evening. I really do appreciate your sentiments. Kabando, as always, thank you. Very refreshing also to have you on the panel. Haman Manyora, as always, thank you. I really do appreciate your sentiments as well. And the pause givers that you're giving us to actually think and ponder about whether the rallying call to call out our president to, from office is the right way to call, and what does it really cost for this country, and will it really make any discernible difference? Thank you so much for your sentiments. Professor Peter Kagwanja, I really want to appreciate you as well, as always, giving us those insights. We've not even discussed the Haiti, of course, diplomatic, raffles that is around it when it comes to the finances and financing this particular mission. That's a different kettle of fish as well. We know the African Union has spoken out regarding also our supporting of the parallel government and the UN as well. That is another topic that we can discuss as well moving forward. Also, I want to say thank you to Oliver Waindi. I think he dropped off us some points, the executive director of Raia Trust, for also sharing his sentiments as well. And Honorable Dan Manzo, thank you so much. As always, I really do appreciate you. You've been such a good brother and making contributions as well on both mainstream media. And now I've introduced you also to this particular medium as well. Take advantage of it, because I think the young people are here and they speak raw as it should be, telling you just, letting themselves hang out their hearts as well. Thank you so very much. I know we had Albert. Thank you for your Flavian. Thank you, and many requests I could see. Rasji, Billy Mwangi, spokesman Maruto, Victor. Many were hanging on the line but because of interest of time, today we've overshot it. We normally co-host Benji Dollar, who also at some point dropped off. I want to say thank you. Always let's remember, in essentials unity, in non-essentials liberty, in all things charity. Let us hang on the essentials. Let us have, of course, liberty in non-essentials, and in all things also have charity. Thank you. May the good Lord bless you and be with you. May he be a pillar of night, or a pillar by night, and a pillar for you also by day. May he bless your water and your bread. Thank